We're back.
We're back.
We're live.
Somehow we thought that bringing our faces to a visual medium would be a good idea.
It's all the rage, actually, because you see it all over social media, Reels, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, X.
Dude.
I'm sure there's others I'm missing.
You've adopted X.
There's a lot. Twitter/X is my social media of choice. People love it. People hate it. It's the best one, in my opinion.
It's the most vivacious of the social medias. It's the most volatile, and another V descriptor that I can't think of. I don't know, man. It just drives me crazy. It's like, yes, I can see someone getting beheaded 1 minute, and then the next minute I can see a beautiful story about like a man finding his pony in the wild after he released it 5 years ago, and then like the stock market's crashing, and then a really like the worst fucking opinion I've ever heard from an absolute neckbeard, and then a communist, and then a terrorist, like all in the same hour. That's too much.
You know what I call that? I call that purity. You get it all. You get everything unfiltered. But before we really do that, it's good to be back, man. If you've listened before, we had one way of doing things. That's dead and gone. We're changed.
It's done.
We're kind of doing a new approach here. The whole reason for the break too really was, I was in nursing school, finished that, currently an ER nurse. Mm-hmm. It's wild. It's crazy. In more school again, but
yeah,
it is what it
finished
is.
School,
so
got into the beautiful world, the easy flowing, perfectly organized world of healthcare, and then decided to go back to school. And I could be laughing at you, but I got my master's degree in the interim. I worked for a little bit in the agency world, and now I'm going back to school. But my dumbass is going into healthcare as well. Let's go, dude.
Yeah,
I'm ready. I saw you and our friends.
Suck, dude.
Yeah, I saw you and our friends suffering and complaining. I was like, I want a piece of that.
Yeah,
Give me a piece of that.
There's so much pieces of it that we're happy to share. And you'll just welcome to the suck, man.
Thank you. The brotherhood.
It's awesome.
The brotherhood of suffering.
Awesome. Yeah, pretty much. But the whole idea of the new approach podcast, right? So it's just more, you listen to podcasts that are out there. Everyone's putting something out about something, but I really enjoy the ones that it's just they talk about things. You learn something, you gain something, or at least it makes you think about, hey, wait a minute, I've never really thought of that before, but now I want to do a little more research into it. Now I want to do X, Y, Z, whatever. So I was like, oh my gosh, I want a piece of that action because I feel like I have so much to say about so many things I'm not qualified to talk in great detail about. But you know what? I think I'm entertaining enough to have people say, that's interesting. That's, you know what? I never thought of it that way. Just bringing a new approach, and maybe people will take it and just say like, hey, you know what? I haven't thought about this before. I'll give it a shot. Let's that made sense, or gosh, no, that didn't make sense. So I'm going to look at something else. I don't know. But that's the, whole reason, completely different change, more, I feel like just more natural. It's just more fun to do it that way. And so, I'm happy to be back. I'm super, super, super excited. I feel like we learned our lesson from the previous stuff. We did a little bit of homework. We've got topic lists ready to go. We kind of figured out what we wanted out of this thing, and I'm pumped to go over some of the stuff that we've got listed. We'll probably, some of it will be discussed a little bit about today when we talk about, as you probably could have guessed, social media today.
It's on our minds constantly.
It's on our minds. It's in our minds. It's in front of our face.
In our soul.
Yeah, exactly.
And where I differ from Austin, where he's taking more of a billboard approach, setting things before you to entice you and expand your mind. I'm bringing an expert opinion. I'm one of the smartest men on earth. I've got an IQ of 185, and everything I say can be taken as fact. Just kidding. I'm so stupid. I'm so dumb. And honestly, I feel like I'm a little boy strapping into a roller coaster ride, and Austin's a conductor. And I feel like we're going to talk about some silly stuff, some serious stuff, everything in between. It's going to be a great ride. And if you just like getting sucked into rabbit holes, then you're our friend. We love you, because that's what we do. We see something, we share something, and then we end up blabbing about the possibilities of it, possibly getting into arguments. It's really the lifeblood of two men in their 30s. That's kind of what happens. You either get into brewing your own beer, or you get into a general topics podcast with your boy.
That's right. That's right.
Two
and you know what?
male pathways in life. That's it.
I like it. I'm here for it. And I think you hit it on the head. The biggest thing is like rabbit holes, and just again, you haven't really thought about it, you haven't heard about it before, and you're like, wait a minute, I kind of want to look into this, and then you just go, and then it's so much fun. That's what I've done recently, listening to all these different podcasts. Obviously Joe Rogan is a great example, an inspiration, if you will. It just literally, I found myself saying, like, why don't I listen to this more? I just learned something every single time. Like, how cool is it to just be able to sit there and learn about new stuff all the time? It's not necessarily, maybe it's, not like topic specific, but like you just learn about new experiences that these people have. That's learning, because they are experiencing something you've never had before, and you're like, wow, I've never even heard about that before, and it affects you and you learn from it. I think it's just the coolest thing, and I'm like, I want to do that. I think I could do that. Not like to that level, but I was just like bursting with like I have to say stuff.
You are bursting. You're constantly bursting, bro. I will say, give yourself a little credit, because I think the big utility of you brought up Rogan is, again, setting things before you to, introduce you to a topic and get your mind spinning about it. I will not say that you always learn something from every episode of that podcast, and others like it. There's a couple that have been like, okay, who is this guy? And then they 5 weeks later turn out to be a total quack, but not often. I don't want to start our first episode in some sort of war, because I'm sure we're going to be on his radar any second now. But
oh yeah, I'm sure.
Until then, Austin?
Yes.
What was the first social media platform you ever adopted? I've been wondering about this, and I wanted to ask you.
I think it was MySpace back in those days, and I actually had to have some friends set it up because I was not allowed to have one for whatever reason. Yeah, that's a real thing. I didn't have AOL. I didn't have any of that. It was
Adam for me too.
It was him. He was the guy.
Adam. Mutual acquaintance.
He was the
our dealer.
White friend that literally is like, yo, you need a social media fix?
He opened his trench coat and was like, hey, buddy.
Yeah, you want an account on MySpace, bro? I got you, dog. Come down to the basement when you're over. We'll set that shit up. And it did. That's how it happened. That's literally how it happened. And that was the introduction to the scene of social media for me. And honestly, we haven't seen any big explosion until I would say now, or maybe a little before, when Vine kind of came out and that kind of a thing.
You're saying like a explosion as in a bloom in users? And like
I would
mainstream
say, yeah. And like
elevation?
day to day, like literal day to day, today. Like every single day you're checking something, you're having a look at something, you're trying to do something with it. I feel like that's really become recently. And it's interesting because I'm torn on it, because I think the use of social media has like incredible features. The information age is awesome, right? I mean, it's just so easy. You can, at the snap of your finger, on this little guy right here, literally the world in my hand. I can learn anything I want to.
A version of the world, but we'll get to that later.
Right. So it's just like it exploded, and it was like, gosh, it's so good. And then you're like, well, you get into it a little bit, and you're like, oh gosh, wait a minute, this is bad. This is not good. I hate this. I can't believe that this is what it's turned into. I can't believe how reliant we all are on it. And we'll dive into it more, but it's just, I think the biggest thing that, to me, social media has almost taken away from people is the ability to just think for yourself. You just latch onto like a trend or the latest ideology, and you're just like, well, everybody's doing it, so I'm not even going to think for myself. I'm not going to look into anything myself. I'm not going to research anything. I'm just going to go for it and scream at the top of my lungs because that's what everybody's doing, and no one's going to care about it. And it's just, it's just disgusting. So it's love-hate for me because I really do think there is some absolute beauty, even today. Not just, like today is very just awful, but also within it, there's gems of like, wow, I can't believe that this, I'm so happy that I was able to stumble upon this, and I would never have if I didn't, have social media. And I would argue that I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you on a podcast on our first episode if it wasn't for social media kind of inspiring me down a little bit of a pathway, and bang, and then I'm just like, oh my gosh, now I want to do this too. So I think there's a lot, right? But I think first things first, you asked me my first, and you asked me what my favorite platform is. So that's MySpace was my first. You
knocked them both out.
X is my favorite. What about you? What was your first, and then what's your go-to now that you have to check every day?
Well, I want to say, as you were giving that little intro to this episode, and you were saying it's got, there's all these great aspects, and then you started saying, there's all of these, negative angles we could take with it. I think like most people in that moment, I was going, yeah, absolutely, yes, I totally agree, but not me. But not me, dude. I'm one of the good ones. I've heard this racket about social media. I grew up in this generation. Of course I know. Of course I'm hip and woke, and I can totally navigate this perfectly. Yes, it's a societal problem. Not for me. I think that's the first level response for most people. And it's like, when you said you can't think for yourself, that happens to me all the time. Where I kind of wake up out of like a 3-hour doom scroll malaise, and you're just injected with all of these like notions, and it's very, very, very hard to detect them and piece them apart and see like where your own thoughts lie. This sounds like basic ass information when it comes to this conversation, but as you said, we're a couple waves into social media. Our generation being pretty much the first to really popularize and use it widespread. It's hit another generation already, and it's about to hit another one. And I think this is a good point to take a step back, because there is no long distance study on any of this stuff. And it's like, are we going to be 80 and the new generations are like, hey, this was your guys' cigarette, man. Like, you guys messed up horribly. You guys all have this weird brain complex, this brain disease. And like, I don't know. We can't really speak to like the physical part of that, I guess, too much. But the concept and all the other, neuropathologies that we might be undertaking, geez, dude, I have no idea. To answer your question, MySpace, our mutual friend Adam, our dealer, our gateway to
the white guy dealer, man.
Our gateway to the abyss.
The white guy getting the Asians into trouble.
Dude, ain't it always
Classic.
the way? Let that be a lesson to all our listeners. If you're white, we don't want any. I'm just kidding. I'm half. We're both. You're married to one. I'm about to marry one. Let's go. We've integrated and infiltrated your society. So watch out.
We did it.
My favorite, dude. I would, by pure statistics, Instagram. That's the one I use the most. Well, hold on a minute now. Now, wait a second. I think it's an even tie statistically between Instagram and YouTube. I think would have to say, if YouTube is applicable as a social media, which I think it is.
I think it is now.
It is
I think
now.
it is now.
Yeah, it was more of like a forum back in the day, but yeah, like I rely on that algorithm to supply me with new music. Obviously, there's a lot of content on there I watch, a lot of video essays. I think everybody's watching freaking video essays on YouTube now, but it's really my number one music source. Like I use Spotify. I have used Spotify. I use Apple Music. Those are fine. But in terms of an algorithm I trust to like give me weekly gold, sometimes daily if I get really lucky, it's YouTube, man. That algorithm is laser precise for exactly what I want in multiple genres. I love it. If you want to start by talking about the utility of social media, that's it for me. For me, it is curation of novel content. Stuff I haven't seen before, or deepening my relationship with a piece, like a creator or a band that I already listened to. YouTube will push like, hey, this was their live album that was taken in Barcelona in 2009 I didn't know about. And certainly new music. So that's, I can't possibly think of another way to replace that besides having like a pretentious network of like friends that I like say, hey, well, hey guys, like what's the newest like happening? And they're like, oh, I don't know. Like it just cuts right through that. And look, I'm not downplaying the importance of human interaction, whatever. I'm just saying, I struggle to see a better way to curate content media like that. There's just no comparison.
So I'm happy to learn that part because I knew that you had told me before Instagram was like your number one thing, and it always surprised me that, well, knowing now that I would say YouTube's probably like the number one, maybe Instagram's number two, just based on what you said there.
Yeah.
But I'm always, whenever you would say, oh yeah, Instagram's my favorite, I'm like, dude, I don't understand how someone like you, and when I say that, I say it as to the YouTube point, to like the craving of wanting to know new things that you like, obscure things that you haven't really thought about. Mm-hmm. Like, I just do not see Instagram as that platform versus like why I really like X/Twitter, whatever you want to call it. You can kind of control. Obviously, that is a sticky situation-ish. Now it's not, in my opinion, but before it was. But anyway, you could control the content that you were receiving, and you could learn new things. You could see things, you could hear things that you've never, like, probably would have never heard of before. But, you know, it really does make sense, the YouTube part of it. And it's surprising because I would classify you as a very knowledgeable person, which is why we're doing this podcast, because I think we just have like this general knowledge of different things. And the reason being is we kind of just like search for it. We're constantly interested. We're bored if we don't. But I'm like, how the hell is he curating this stuff? Looking at Instagram memes, like that's all that is on there. There's nothing of value on there. I'm sure there is. There's a little bit, obviously, like reels, and everybody's got that stuff now, so you can learn stuff. But I just, as a prime like learning social media content tool, I'm like, well,
if the keyword is learning, yeah, I'll fastly admit that Instagram is among the trashiest out there in terms of like what the Discover page is offering you. It's a lot of people dying. It's a lot of horrible, like, thrice picked over memes from other platforms that have like limped their way from TikTok to Twitter and then now to Instagram. You know what I mean? Like that seems to be like the life cycle, because Instagram kind of gets it last. I don't know. It kind of filters the rest of the platforms for you. I think that might be the utility for Instagram and why a lot of boomers use it. If you look at the usage statistics, a lot of them have come over from Facebook and are now using Instagram, partially because they have Meta, owns them both, but a lot of them get their tap into like pop culture and the zeitgeist through Instagram. And typically, just to give you, my background is in social media, for those who don't know. I've been doing it for like 10 years. Although I sound like a boomer, I promise I've used all the platforms to some level of efficiency, but it takes about 3 weeks for a novel wave to go from what I would call an echelon 1 social media, which would be definitely TikTok, probably Twitter X. It takes about 3 weeks for that to reach Facebook and Instagram. That is how far behind they are on average, which is crazy to think about. But at the same time, it kind of sifts out a lot of the stuff that isn't, I would say, notable content. I say that, but I'm also thinking now, like I just looked at it, it also elevates some of the stupidest content. That's elevated because it's that dumb. So you get the best and the worst of both worlds.
And I think it's cool because you have had a lot of experience in your marketing and your previous work was basically you had to have social media. You had to use it because how else would you promote, function, do your job, etc. with, and nowadays, because that's really the only way to get information out is through social media, really. I mean, I would say like cable network stuff, it's there, it's got its place right now, but streaming services, social media, I mean, the just amount of information that you can get on your own time, that's, you would like to think, I would like to think it should be unfiltered. So you just get that raw info that you can determine for yourself is better than what's on TV now. And I think for me, like social media, when I think about it, at first, its first creation was in a sense like connection, right? Mm-hmm. I think that was like one of the coolest things when it first came out. Not like necessarily friends connecting like you see every day at high school, like, whatever. That hindsight's 2020, probably back then, middle school, high school, early days, like it mattered then. How many friends do you have? Now it doesn't, looking at it. But I think it's like really cool. Like I know people across the country that I can like, basically I get updates of their life that they posted and I can, see that. I know one of my good friends, family friends that I've known for a long, long time that I grew up with before social media existed. They were my next door neighbor when I lived in Colorado. And then, we both lived in Texas. So like his parents live in Denver. He lives in, I can't even remember now. He's in the military, so he gets bumped all over the place. But anyway, so the family's like all spread out. But then I get to see that they go to Disney. My wife loves Disney, so we posted Disney pictures, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, we just missed you by a week. We need to coordinate next time." And like, without social media,
Sure.
What's the reality that either of us like pick up the phone and say like,
by the way,
we wouldn't even know, right? We wouldn't even know that we're at Disney or anything like that. But it's just like, it pushes past a barrier, I think, that has fallen to the wayside, I guess. Like, usually you're not afraid, people weren't afraid to talk to each other. It was like a normal, it was a nice thing. Human interaction was fantastic. It's great. It still is. It's still needed, but the beauty of social media is it kind of just like broke that barrier. It's like you don't need to be in front of them. You can like log in and log out technically, right? Like that was the thought. You can log in, log out as you want, which means you have control of your interaction at all times. Obviously, we probably know that that's not necessarily true because of how, whether it's addicting or whatever it is that you have to look and then it's bad, whatever. But it just broke those barriers, which in turn, I think is like okay, because I think it's nice if you have trouble connecting, talking with people, it makes it easier. And then maybe in person, it's less hard with that person. It's like this weird thing, right? With just who we are now and how we're turning, society, what we're growing up into with information technology, all this stuff at our fingertips. It changes the status quo of what we need to do as people with each other, which is like a plus, but also a really big minus, which I think we saw, when we were completely cut off from each other, except for social media during COVID. But
it doesn't work in a vacuum. It does not work in a vacuum.
And it's like, and the problem is, it's just, there's no easy, this is a good healthy way to do it and this is a bad healthy. It's like you got to go to each person, you got to figure it out. But that's just like the biggest thing, I think, like the beauty of it. And then when we turn into just like the disgusting part of it is just unfortunately the user error that occurs, or not even user error, but just like the user
arguably mentality, user error, arguably a super precise campaign to keep users activated as long as possible by extremely intelligent people who design these experiences. I don't know, like, yes, we are all adults with agency. I absolutely have the power to be like, I am done scrolling. I'm going to go back to work. I am not going to spend 3 hours scrolling down my Discover page. But then I do. And what's stupid about that is I am one of those people that designs those experiences. That's been my job for the last 8 years almost. And obviously, I'm more on the content side. I'm not on the user experience side, which would be how the algorithm recommends things to you, that sort of stuff. But it's crazy. If someone like me can be completely engrossed, and look, I do have ADHD, but still, like, if someone like me can be that engrossed, it's like, what chance do young people have that have really never known anything else? I mean, look, our generation loves to harp on it, but we did, I'm going to say, thankfully grow up in an era previous to the social media explosion. And I think that really, I want to say it set us up for success, but now as the years go on, now I'm like, it was like the bare minimum we needed to like not completely unravel as people. I'm not someone who like doom and glooms like the new generations completely at all. Like you said, all of those positive lessons that we've learned in the first couple waves of social media are like super evident. Keeping up with family and friends in ways that you never would. Like, we all talk so much. Our friend group is so tight-knit, and like it lives and breathes and is served by like our chat platforms and our social media. And like you mentioned in your last little bit there about people who find it hard to connect. I think you might have been talking about people who are maybe busy or like fast-paced life or like family and obligations, but I think a great, addition to that is people who are maybe socially awkward, who live in a rural community and they just can't find that local community that they're like really pining for. And these are all amazing things, which is why I'm not incredibly worried. But I'm like, I don't know, are we going to miss out on the proliferation of live sports? If you look at data about, kids and playtime, I'm just privy to this because my fiance is a child psychologist trainee. It's going way, way down. I mean, we've known for a long time that recess and stuff like that's way down, but the prevalence of sports teams, they're going way, 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 way down. I don't know. I don't know if that's a function of the times or if social media is at the forefront of that, but it concerns me. I don't know about you.
I mean, I think yes, in some aspects that it will take away from some things. I think like live sports they've integrated themselves, like the major sports leagues. Like, can I imagine a world where the NFL doesn't exist? No.
Oh, no. Okay, keep going with your point, but let me clarify. Not concerned about professional sports. It's such a machine. It's so entertaining.
Okay, I misunderstood. I'm sorry.
It's Caesar's gladiatorial arena, dude. You can't get rid of it.
What are you?
The world will go upside down. Get rid of it.
What are you talking about? Do I need to come down there and attack you? You're taking football.
No, I'm strictly talking about local community sports, school age sports, that kind of thing.
That makes sense. I mean, yeah, it probably does. I'd be interested to hear exactly, obviously your fiance is probably a qualified expert in regards to.
She should be here. It shouldn't be me.
And like, yeah, I mean, with like children especially, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'd say like we're okay. We don't know like the statistics. I think we have like a general idea, and I think that's good enough for the level that we're talking at. But, you know, I'm just really curious to see, like, because it's just like almost like a stigma. It's like you look at kids now, they're on phones, they're like 5. I'm like, I had like a coloring book when I was 5. And I think, you know, that's like while it's a little bit of a joke, the stand still entails, like, I was not plugged into anything until I was older. Granted, there was nothing to plug into, and you were born into this. Like, you have phones, and like they give you iPads at school to learn, and computers, and like all these different things. But you know, it is like that's what it is. Like, even you know, in like the ER and stuff, when we see kids, it's like they need to be, like, if we got to do something with them, give them a phone, give them something that they can distract themselves with, which is, you know, great. But it is like a constant stimulus that's needed at like a younger age, I think. And yeah, I mean, I would say in some capacity, I think it would affect like a local, like, sports stuff, but I still think the machine of like the big major sports, especially when you consider like NCAA, NIL, like you can get paid as a college kid if you're good enough. Like, that is like the other side of the story. It's like driving, you know, kids, like, you could make millions of dollars if you're really good at this. And I think that, you know, there's certain sets of kids that will gravitate towards that versus the other thing. I think maybe there's like a more distinct split, but, you know, I could see like local community, like smaller kids sports, like kind of like fallen to the wayside because no one's really interested in it. It's not stimulating enough. It's not, you know, I'm not getting new stimulus every 10 seconds, every minute, every minute and a half, you know, whatever. So I can't focus on a sport, whatever, which I think is a whole nother issue in itself that we're probably going to talk about, you know, in the subject of more of like a mental health area.
Sure.
But, you know, regardless, I get it. Like, I do. And I think that's worrying in my mind, just because while I guess it's a worry in my mind because I think, you know, how I grew up and what I'm doing now, you know, that part, you know, like the social media aspect and like the technology aspect doesn't really play a big part of my life and my job and all these different things. Like, you got to know how to do some stuff, but it's not. But then I think like, well, this generation is the driving force. Like, they might revolutionize everything. So maybe their day to day will need all this stuff. Like, I don't know. But as it stands, like right now, like black and white, I think it is something that is a bit of a problem, if you will. It can be worrisome because there's no control over it from like I'm not going to say like a parental point of view, but like just in general, there's no like, okay, we're done with this, let's go do something else.
We had to go to Live Leak to get our insanely graphic violence, you know, that's again, it was some random kid who's like, hey man, you want to see something? Look at this.
Yeah, right.
It was a whole thing. If you hop on Instagram and you're looking at like, oh cool, like this is a really cool video of like people on BMX bikes, scroll that for 5 more minutes and then suddenly it's like this video is restricted, see why, and then you click it and then somebody falling off a cliff and exploding on the floor of a valley. I agree with you. Like that's gotta be problematic, and it must be frustrating for parents to know that anybody and anything, any entity, any subculture could be reaching out to your children at any time, or to a vulnerable population at any time. There's a ton of issues, but I feel like it's prudent to take a devil's advocate approach just for a second and say, listen, has every generation, in reference to into the upcoming generation, haven't they always been like, hey man, it's not like the way it used to be. The new generation, the kids aren't all right. They're messing up. Like when movies came out, that was the big scare. I went to film school, I don't even remember, but in the early 1900s, that was the big scare. And then as we started adding like more graphic television, that was the new big scare. every generation, and actually every half generation, has some new cultural element that rises to the forefront, typically revolving around some kind of technology. And it's typically demonized for a little bit. Video games was kind of ours. We were half video games that kind of preceded us, and now half social media. But and I don't know, every time it seems to be mostly kind of batted down for the most part. Like, yes, there are compulsive behaviors associated with video games. You can't let your kids just do that all day long. Horrible. But if it's done in moderation, blah, 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 we figure out a way to navigate that. People can watch TV and be, really lackadaisical about it if they let it run away from them. But again, extremely manageable. When newspapers became mainstream, guess who thought newspapers were going to be the end of human interaction? The previous generation. Like, they were a huge deal. And then you look at these historical photographs of people on the subway all with their noses buried in newspapers, and like in that slice, in that visual, you could be like, oh man, these newspapers are dragging people away from human interaction. What are we going to do? So I don't know, like, are we underestimating the power of, let's say this is it Generation X, this next generation that's up and coming? Are we underestimating the power of like the human animal to resist that? Like, is it possible that them seeing millennials be extremely cringy with like, oh, we're addicted to social media? Is it possible that they're going to see that and be like, I'm going to go my own way on that? Like, maybe I'll interact with some form of social media. It will be a thing, but I am going to make a concentrated effort to re-engage with like physical interactions. Like, kind of like what the free love movement was in the 60s and 70s. Like, that was a counterculture movement that was completely predicated on previous generations. So I don't know. Sometimes I feel like we underestimate the power of kids being like, that looks like it sucks. You guys are shackled to this thing, and we're going to figure it out. See ya.
I mean, I hope so. I really do. But I think the biggest differences that I see with what you just said there is like these revolutionary technologies, like, as weird as it sounds, the newspaper, like nothing like it. Bang, it comes out. Holy crap, crazy. TV, the development of film, like, it gets better and better and better. Like, we've never seen this level, because like we look at those pictures are black and white. There's no sound. They're chopped up. They're gross. Like, it's just like, whoa, it's cool because it's never been done before. But then it starts getting like, we see out of our own eyes. We're like, okay, it's cool, but it's never going to beat what I'm seeing. And then we get closer and closer and closer. Now the movies and stuff, it's just like, dang, like, I know it looks real. It does. It really does. And we know it's not in some instances, but, and I think that, like, for me, that's like the biggest difference. Like, today, there's not like, I don't think there's any kind of revolutionary change that it's like we've not seen before. Like, we're not necessarily like peaked, but I feel like I look at the technology that's on the horizon and that's coming, and it's like a constant refining of what we have now. It's like we've like hit this level, and it's like we're good, but it could be better. It could be more real. Like, we could incorporate a human experience into this, versus like we're introducing something brand new that no one could think was possible. We're introducing this. No, it's like, no, we're just going to refine what you have because you really like it. And instead of doing something new or whatever, we're going to literally refine it. So it's like, I mean, like, it's like you might not be able to tell the difference. And we're hitting that a little bit now with AI, right? Which is a whole nother topic we'll talk about. But just very briefly, it's like when you're filtering social media, it's like now you have to be careful of what you see because it could be fake. And like that stuff, the fact that you now have to like try and filter or look through or like source out different possible news things, images, pictures, videos, because it's like,
that's the sound of a can of worms you're opening.
I mean, it is. But like, that's the worry. It's like, like I am with you. Like, I think there's people that'll be like, absolutely not. Like, this is not working. But it like, it's a little scary to look at now. And statistically speaking, I don't have numbers, right? I don't know, but it just feels like the general status quo and the trend is just immersing harder into this stuff because it's better for us. It makes life easier, which it does, but it's just like it's that kind of thought process and like what you said earlier, like this higher level of thinking, like not necessarily like haha we got you, but I mean it kind of feels that way. They're just making it easier and better. It's like, oh well, we want to make it easier, we want to make it better for people. Like that's what's going to advance us as a race or as a society. And
what you just said right there, that little snippet, that is going to be probably, in my opinion, the most important conversation the people working on these platforms are going to have, and as a wider race of humans. So I think the words you just said were, I want to make it better, we want to make this experience better. I believe that is the innocent core of most of this. I do believe that people sit down, they're like, how can we make this user experience better? How can we get the content that people want in front of their faces? Like, I think people sit down and work on that, and they're really passionate, and they have every right to be. I do think, in a subtle way, it's a little slippery slope, I do think eventually, and it's happening already, but I do think eventually that slips into we can't let our users leave.
Oh, it's money.
We can't let our users leave because it's money out of our pockets.
It's and that's like I was waiting for that but. I was waiting for that but. Like you said, I was like,
it's a vested interest. They have to do it if they want to be a successful platform. The arms race accelerates at a rate because of the technology that you were just talking about. The arms race of like who's going to have the best user retention. Like we're already at that point of like, I kind of want you on there 100% of your waking hours, dog. I kind of need you on there scrolling through my stuff, because if you're not, me and my whole division are going to get fired by the stakeholders.
God,
it got there so fast, man.
It did. And you know what? God bless capitalism, because I fucking love it, but damn you, capitalism, because this is exactly, you're causing the fucking problem in such a bad way, but I can't hate you because it's so successful. And it's like you just take, I say, capitalism, I take the bad with the good, because the good, it's the best system in my opinion, because you can make money from nothing, but damn it, when you strike gold, then you just abuse it until no end. Right. And like, it's like you said, it's like, at pure of heart is the whole thought process of, how can we make life better, easier? Sure. But then it's like, the but is like, well, also money. And like that, unfortunately, there's no like level-headed top, part. Although there's one, I would say, but at face value, there's not like one level-headed like, okay, yeah, we don't need to monetize the crap out of this. It's like every single person in some capacity at the top level in a competitive, cutthroat user experience business is probably like money, Mr. Krabs. And like, can you blame them? I can't. I can't get mad at them for that. Like, that's literally their livelihood. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's like I said, it's the blessing and it's the curse of capitalism at its core that this happens. Now, but I think there's one platform that actually values the purity of the information, which it's not perfect. I'm
interested to hear what you're going to say here.
I think it continually gets better. I'm surprised that you already don't know. I mean, it's Elon Musk and it's X and Twitter.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me why.
Okay.
Well, first of all, define what you mean by start with the adjectives you used. You said it was pure, and what else?
Yeah. I mean,
that's important for you to define, I think.
Right, and I get that. I think, to me, what Elon Musk is, who he is as a person, having, not like I know him, just obviously like everybody else, watching his we're huge, we're bros. Just watching who he is as a person on interviews on, like, he's been on JRE a bunch. He's very active in his social media. If you look at him, he is the same guy in everything. He doesn't put on like a facade. He doesn't meet to match, like, oh, I'm going on Joe Rogan, so I need to act one way, but I'm flipping and I have a meeting with, like a media company on a big interview about world politics, and I'm going to be a different guy. He's the same dude. And what he did, in my opinion, he took, I think Twitter was one of his favorite apps, if I'm being honest. I really think he liked it. And it transformed.
He dropped on that. He has to.
Yeah, I mean, it like transformed itself. Like, it used to be, you control your media experience on Twitter. You can interact. It's like a short interaction, so you can't like, usually, I mean, people that try and fight on there, it's like you tire yourself out. You can only type so many characters, or used to be. But then, obviously, like the big, without trying to get too political, I think if you couldn't see the clear, like, one way, I hate to say the word censorship, but like, if you couldn't see how Twitter was being manipulated and how it was going really well for one side and really bad for the other, but there was like no clear, if there's clear evidence, if there's clear, crystal clear, like, oh yeah, it makes sense, like, absolutely fine, do what you got to do. But it wasn't. It was so just convoluted and sketchy and dark and gross, and it was like, no, wait, none of this makes sense. Like, literally none of it makes sense. And then like the owner, Jack, he's backpedaling. He says one thing, and then like a couple weeks later he's getting grilled. He's like, well, it's not me, there's a whole division. And then and he's like, well, but we support this, and we'll look into it. And it's just like this back and forth. You're like, something's happening. Like, and that the beauty of social media is there's an independent people that can project their findings and their voice out there for people, and that's like a beauty thing of it, is you realize what's kind of happening. So anyway, I think so. Elon Musk buys Twitter, and then he like cleans house, and from day one he has been a proponent of supporting like pure free speech on X, like both sides. He's
that's what you mean by pure. It's
right. Yeah, it's like
censorship is extremely low.
Correct. It's like, if you want to find something, you will get it at its value. You don't have to worry about like the interpretation, like it's getting manipulated, or what like the community notes thing is better, it's hilarious how people both sides are getting smacked by it. It's beautiful. It happens on both sides, and that's the thing that I value the most. It's like, it's equal in its delivery system. And the fact of the matter is, to me, is like, Elon Musk has continually said the same thing over and over and over again, wanting to deliver like the I say pure, but it's like the free speech aspect of it without any type of control. And he's got the type of money that basically he's got fuck you money, which not a lot of people have. He's one of those guys that does.
Sure.
I mean, and he just does what he thinks is right. And but he's not like, it's just, if you just look at him, in my opinion, I'm like rambling, but if you look at him and you look at other people in power, essentially like money power, right? Mm-hmm. Elon Musk is the same dude constantly. It's awesome. Okay. It really is. If you really like look into it and watch it and watch him and see what he does, he is the same. I feel like you can't really say the same about most people in his position, which is why I love X, because it's like, it's unfiltered, and there's stuff on there that I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I decide to follow this and get this content? Because it's crap. But okay, like it's like pure in a sense of like, it's like, I know it's coming straight. It's not being like, I'm not being sent, like they're not getting censored. It's not being manipulated in how it gets to me. In some capacity, right? It's not perfect. It still happens, but that's what I say, and that's what I mean with like the purity aspect. Like it's just like an information dump for me to go through that I can like pick and choose, and I can source things however I want it. And I know that I don't have to worry that it's like, well, I'm being pushed certain things when I'm really looking for something else, which I think happened in the past. Okay. So That's why I love X. And that's why I say, you know, my whole piece about Elon Musk, because he's like bringing that aspect to it.
Let me speak some Austinese here for the viewers, because I know you.
All right.
And then I also want to challenge you on something, because that's what we do here. We have conversations. Number one, when you say manipulated, I take it to mean the algorithm is truly an open algorithm and not one. So an open algorithm is something that is only supplying things based on macro activity in the community and your interests. That's what an open algorithm is in its most basic definition. You're saying then on other platforms, maybe it's a little bit more intricate of an algorithm where at some level, the hand of whoever, you know, designs the platforms, designs user experience, stuff like that, it is subtly providing, let's just say, a set of content that could be slightly contrary to your personal interests and the statistical like bell curve of like the community at large. So one of them is like this is a perfect statistical average of like the most popular stuff plus your interests. The other one is this is not a statistical average. There are things that we want to push this week, whether nefarious or bad or not. It's just, hey, like on this platform, okay, I'll give you a great example. Facebook, they push their groups content a lot. Facebook groups, they have a vested interest. They put tons of money into their group experience. They push cooking, family and lifestyle, and alternative medicine. Those are the three big categories for Facebook groups, and it's not even really a secret. So that's what I mean by it doesn't have to be nefarious, but they truly like are trying to get as many, you know, middle-aged people into those things because that's their main group. So I haven't been on Twitter in a while, and I haven't been on there since it became X. So that's interesting to hear you say that, like you truly feel that the algorithm is kind of yours to wield and yours to control. Because like I'll tell you right now, on YouTube, on Instagram, and I am on Facebook a little bit because I'm getting gray hairs. Yeah, I totally sense the presence of things being pushed to me that like I am not interested in this at all. I have no idea how I got here. I have no idea why I'm seeing this. I understand that like the macro, again, the middle of that bell curve is different than my interests, and I will see stuff that I don't actually really want to see. But it is strange and kind of encouraging to hear you say that. Yeah, you do feel like X supports your interest and like holds your values and your curiosity kind of as like the premium. That's something that I don't really feel like I get from the platforms that I use. Now I will say there was one more thing that I wanted to point out is it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, don't let me mischaracterize this, but it seems like at least a fraction of your enjoyment of X. Look at me saying X now, dude, like I've always said it. Like your enjoyment of it is somewhat based on an appreciation for like the public figure of Elon Musk. Is that correct? Just that like, hey, like you believe he's a solid dude. He makes decisions that you agree with, and you're happy to use the technology he provides. Is that at all in the ballpark?
I would say it's not to like that level. I would say like Twitter has always been my favorite app.
Fair point.
From like a control at like I can control what I see when I want to see it. I would say like my experience with Twitter/X has been kind of like a constant. Like it hasn't really changed even when it was, you know, quote unquote bad as I described it, right? Yeah. I just think it's like in the general like principle, like when we talk about social media, like we can sit here, we can talk about like our personal experiences, how we utilize it. But I think in the grand scheme of things, and something that it feels really dumb for me to like say, but it's like I used to like view the world as similar like to the people that I interact with, right? Like I held the world in a lot higher of a standard. I like to think that I have surrounded myself with good quality people. I would say like our friend group, the people that I interact with, that I talk with, that I choose to spend my time with, are all very, at some level, they're intellectual. They can think for themselves. It's just, it's hard to describe, but like, that's what those like people that I see on a day-to-day basis, I interact with, like, that's like the world. Like, the world is like that. No, that's not the case. That's not the case at all. It's not even close. Like, the world is literally just so, it's literally like cattle, like sheep. It literally, it just like follow. It's like, that's like the biggest thing, in my opinion, that was why I kind of want to talk about it, because like social media and why, it's geared certain ways is because it's so easy to control what people see, how people see it. Like, the initial intent was, right, like, oh, you like, I'll use me as an example.
Yeah.
Facebook snake videos. Like, I just got,
you're on that reptile grind, dog.
Dude, one day, like a year ago, I was just sitting there scrolling a little bit, and I saw like some cool videos about like this dude with snakes, and I'm like, I would never do that, but this guy's kind of cool. And then like, that's what I started watching a little bit. I would watch little videos, and like, that's what it would send me. And so it was like, okay, nice. Like, I literally, like, I just sheeped. I'm like, oh, snakes. Like, but that was like, it was like a cool thing. But that, like, so that's like a harmless one, right? But I'm talking about like people that, and again, we'll cross over it into like the mental health side whenever we cross that bridge, right? It's on our topic list. Sure. But I truly think that one of the biggest problems that we have today is people do not know who they are. They have no idea. They do not know anything about themselves. They are so subjugated to the media and that, like, all the social factors that hit us, like through social media, it's so heavily influenced that people don't really know them. They just know what they see and what people like. I want to be liked. I kind of agree with this. It's like less of like, I think some people, like, things that they see are like, oh yeah, this has really struck a chord with me. I think others are just like blindly following it because they think everybody else is doing it. And I think there's I think there's examples out there that you could argue is like the case of that happening. And that's where like so the long answer to your question for me, right, was, my use of X and my thoughts of Elon. And so the biggest thing is like X, I've always liked. I always have control of my own content regardless. I've never felt like I've had anything necessarily like censored for me personally that I've tried to look at or see. Like maybe a couple things that, whatever.
Maybe on the bounds of being like too graphic or something.
Like, I think just like certain things that you try to look at, okay, within the scope of the status quo of society, you couldn't find it, or it was really hard, or it was like just unobtainable. And so that's like my thing about Elon Musk is like he rips that all away. And like what we said earlier about, hey, technology makers at their core, or maybe the ones that are below the capitalist guys, are like, I want to make life easier, life better for these people. And that's what I think Elon does, because like he's got like he's got X that's losing him money, but then he's got SpaceX, he's got Tesla that are just cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And like he is so wealthy because of what he does and how he practices managing his wealth. Like, he has a lot of things that he does, but basically it's like he's not really looking to make money off of X. He literally, he says it. He says there was a problem with the way media was being controlled to its users, and I didn't like that, and I think that's bad for society. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger and buy this thing and fix that, because I view Twitter as a large media platform. It's all around the world. It's worldwide users. It's a huge one. It's always been big. And he said, enough's enough. I'm taking the reins finally, like, look at me. I'm the captain now kind of energy. And he did that. And that's why. So it's like completely separate for me. Like my personal experience versus what my ex, like Elon thoughts are like two different things. But that's just based on like my general thoughts of social media, because, I don't have a problem. Like I look at things, and I think you look at things. I think the people we are around and interact with look at things and they say, that makes sense. I'll look into that. I'll take a little extra time and read about that, or look into that, or do something about that. Or if you don't like it, you'd be like, you know what? I look into it and I didn't like it, so I'm done with it. That's, a lot of people like it. Fine. I don't. Or you see it at face value and you're like, ooh, no, not for me. I'm going to go my own way. And that's, like I said, that's why I thought the world was like that, but it's not. It's literally like, I feel like people just gravitate to these crazy things. And like now, again, I'm trying really hard not to get like over the top, crazy about, but it just bothers me like that. It's like this sheep mentality. And I really think people don't know who they are, and it causes problems that they just don't know about. Like they don't really know. It's like, why am I so, upset about certain things, or why do I feel certain ways about certain things that you would normally, and sometimes they catch themselves. They're like, I've done it myself. Like, why am I investing time and energy into this? And it really does not affect me.
Yeah.
But here I am. And then, being able to say like, okay, I'm unplugging myself, not necessarily from like social media, but I'm going to unplug myself from this situation. And I'm going to come back at it because clearly it got something from me. I need to revisit that. And you go back to it and you're like, oh, you know what? Maybe I was caught up in something. Maybe I saw something. Maybe it was something else. I don't know, whatever. But the ability to pull yourself away because it's like at your core value, who you are, and you're just like, that's not who I am. I don't care if
you're saying you have a basis,
status quo.
You have something to return to that keeps you anchored when you navigate and go through social media on a daily basis.
Yeah, I would call it that in like a layman's terms, if you will. That's like my biggest thing. That's my biggest problem with it is. And I think we've said it without saying it. The capitalization, right? The capitalist mentality, the beauty and the curse. The curse is awful. It's like people don't care about the middle game because all they think about is the ching end game. And it's like whatever destruction that it rots in between that is okay. And it's like, as long as it's not like actual destruction, then it's fine. But the reality is it is affecting.
We're operating in, and I don't mean that matrix. I mean literally the medium we're operating in. The damage is hard to assess because it does. Yes, it happens in the arena of the intangible, and it won't reveal itself for a long time.
Well, I mean, you see the cracks of it. I think you see, if you look hard enough or you follow it or whatever, you look into it, whether it's conspiracy or not, I think it's just like, I think a lot of more people are waking up to it, which I'm happy about, but it just makes me worry, the younger generation that is just so plugged in, who knows? But that's another thing.
Go ahead.
It's just, it's just the ability to think for yourself and have like your own opinion and be comfortable and be okay with that, even if other people are saying, no, that's not okay.
Dude, so a couple concepts. I think there's at least two things I want to touch on. The most of what you just said, I think, relates to this concept called pipelines. You might have heard that, like, oh, the pipeline from X to Y is, strong in whatever subculture you're talking about on social media. I do think that I agree with you. I am worried about that as well because I was an angsty young man one time in my life. So were you. I remember how malleable I was. And actually, there are times when I think about that time and I go, dang, the right type of authority figure could have came in there and they really could have got me to do anything. If I would have talked to the right recruiter, who knows what would have happened? Like, I remember that time. I was angsty, I was angry, I was curious, and like if I had the wealth of content and information available to me, all of these different subcultures that I could have invested myself in, great chance I end up fine. I just like get really into like Warhammer 40K or something. But there's also a decent chance that like maybe I get into some not so great stuff, or I really go wayward and really circle the drain on what what I actually might be good at in my life. You know what I mean? Because it has the power to pull you in so many different ways. So I agree with you about the pipeline thing. And I think, like, how can we establish an anchor for kids growing up in this environment? I have no idea. I have no clue. I feel like I barely got mine together by the time social media really reared its head and like became ubiquitous. I have no clue. I want to believe that I just don't fully understand the inner workings of the mind, and that the human genome is strong and that we can anchor ourselves and navigate it, but I don't know. It's pretty addicting stuff. And like I said, like we've been talking about, the UX design, the experience it's palpable. It's strong. It's ingrained. It's touching every aspect of our lives basically at this point. Okay, the other thing that you were talking about, that you said the word manipulated a couple times. And I think I know the manipulation you're talking about again is like the censorship side of things. From my perspective of working in communications, I just want to add a couple other angles of manipulation, see what you think about them. And I'm saying this because I think most people have this desire to say, I can take it, I can handle it, I can take on this huge wave, this huge front of information and culture and narratives hitting me, and I can take it on, I can internalize it, I can kind of set things apart and find my way. And I believe that about you, because you've always been sort of kind of like a mountain, like a hard to move. You're very stoic, and like you've always been that way. And obviously not everybody's like that.
Right.
Not everybody's like that, but everybody thinks that they are. That's the problem. So here are these angles of manipulation. Number one, bot commenting. It's not exactly what you think. It's not always like there's automated bot comments that like are obviously stupid, that appear from, they're generally deployed by like click farms and stuff like that. There's other types of commentary that are manned by paid people, and it's not even that subversive. Guess what? I've done it. Agencies I used to work for, we've done it. Usually it's in the form of our client is starting a nascent social media page. Their content doesn't have an audience. Guess what? We flood the comments on our personal social medias, on our family and loved ones' social media accounts. We flood them, we follow them. We engineer that so the algorithm starts picking something up and going, okay, there's comments, blah, 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 blah. So that's the very innocent side of it. But then again, click farms are not just click farms anymore. If you don't know what a click farm is, that is an agency typically in a non-Western country that just clicks on videos to boost their numbers. That's its basic version. Those have evolved a lot. It's a huge conversation, but what it boils down to is you can pay those people to leave comments of any kind, anywhere. They come from authentic social media accounts. There's no back-end hacking or anything crazy. It's just people own hundreds of accounts, and they get paid to deploy comments from the highest bidder. And it's not regulated very well, because how could you? If there are some security measures based on IPs and stuff like that, but what I'm saying is there are angles of manipulation that go beyond just back-end stuff or blocking certain types of content or pushing certain types of content. Sometimes the algorithm is pushed by an inorganic organic means, meaning it's a natural process, quote unquote, but it's being loaded in one direction by these huge efforts, to push the algorithm in a certain direction. So I don't want to. I guess my point here is, I just don't want to end up as a cautionary tale. In several decades from now, when they're doing lectures about this era, and they're like,
well, everybody thought that they had their ducks in a row, but really they were all sliding down, the hell slide to the abyss, and like we never figured it out. I think we're a bit more malleable than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And before I probably go on another serious rant, in a vacuum, how fucking cool would it be to have one of those jobs? Is like, yeah, someone has to pay me the highest bid to write a comment on your video, and like you just type you suck, like just the letter U. That's literally space yes SUK, like you suck. Like in a vacuum, that would be the best fucking job ever. Just, hey, we don't like this guy. We need you to just write some not overly negative comments about him or her on their page, like their recent video. So just get some people and just write some stuff like, okay, I'll take $6,000 for that. Okay, it's done. All right, perfect. You suck.
Now that's a pretty premium price for a single IP to be doing that.
Winky face with a winky face. Like, it's not surprising that is a job. In a vacuum, I just think that's so fucking funny. Like that I know it's probably a lot more complicated than that. In my mind, on the simpler side, it's like,
that is what that is. And if you can bait a little bit of outrage, guess what? That's engagement. That's people reacting to your comment, like, "What are you talking about?" It builds and festers on itself like you wouldn't believe. And it's so easy.
Yeah,
it's so easy.
And that's like the worrying thing, or the biggest thing is like saying all this stuff, but like it's like, okay, smart guy, you're whining about all this stuff. I don't think it's that bad, but if it's such a big problem, why don't you fix it? Like, that's the problem. Where do you start? Like, where would you address this?
Live in the woods.
Right? But it's like
hermit life.
In reality, that's never going to happen. And it circles back to, like, I'm really excited to talk about like mental health, because I see, I interact with a lot of people in the ER, and it's just like everybody's on something, really, which is crazy in my opinion. I mean, it helps a lot of people, but also it's like sometimes it just doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, I think that's like a big piece of the puzzle, is just the normal human, like I hate to say like realization or actualization, but like that's what it like almost boils down to, is like, I will die on this hill, is like, if you don't know who you are, and to your point, Connor, like people being malleable, if you don't know who you are, then you will literally, whether you know it or not, you will just
stretch
like gravitate
a million directions, dude.
You will gravitate to the latest thing that you are, that is interesting, or that you think other people think isn't. I think that's the biggest problem. It's like people don't think that it's interesting to them. They're just like, oh, well, everybody's doing it. And, I think cancel culture has like a really big effect on a lot of this stuff too, because it's like, especially young people, like if not to like the level of like, obviously like big people getting canceled and all that stuff, but just like essentially a young person being canceled in their school, meaning they become suddenly exiled from their norm or their group or whatever. Like, that's probably a huge fucking deal. And it always has been, but it's so easy to do now, because literally there is nothing sacred anymore, because people want to share their lives, which is fine. You can do whatever you want to, but then it's like one little thing. And it's not even like, it's like an opinion thing that like sometimes obviously bad, okay, that's fine. It's bad. No, don't
generally
do that.
Just bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Like stay away from that. But then sometimes it's just like, it's the opinion of someone else that's somehow taken at higher value than someone else's. And then suddenly it's like a wildfire. It like outrage, like you said, I'm sure it's so easy to get outraged, like click stuff, because literally you can say one thing and all it takes is one person to lose it, go off the rails, and just explode. And guess what? They'll either get people that really agree with them, or they'll get people that really don't agree with them, but they'll duke it out anyway. And it's just like, I think that's one of the other problems of social media, is that it's just created this facade, like the whole keyboard warrior, like it was a joke, and it was like well, you know, not everybody's doing it as much, but like oh my gosh, like but it's like, how do you, like, what do you do about it? You can't do anything. What do you say? Like, oh, I'll catch you in real life, buddy, and I'll teach you a lesson. Like, okay, now you just sound like a fucking dumbass. Almost. Yeah, I mean, it's just like it's like spot. Like you listen to that, like people saying like, oh, catch me outside. How about that? You know, you listen to those people, and then suddenly you're like, what the. Like, are you serious, bro? It's just a keyboard thing. But then on the other side, it's like, well, what do you do? But it just creates this new unfiltered megaphone that people just can't ignore either. And they react to it, and it affects them. And it's just this never ending cycle of just like hot topics to 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 hot topics. I mean, it's like crazy. Like it's like lightning flashes all over the place, and nothing really sticks. But it still causes damage. It still causes ruin for the people that it does actually hit. And it's just like, I think that is just a product of social media, and like that is not something that is like algorithm or created. That is literally just like a human construct going in. And just like someone figured out, like, you know what, this person can't do anything to me, so I'm gonna say whatever the hell I want. And guess what? As long as I'm not actually breaking any like federal laws or whatever, I'm good. I can say whatever they want. And it's just like, then everyone figured that out, and now it's just open season on anyone at any time. And yet, like, you would think like people would be like, ooh, I don't want to be a part of that. And then you're like, well, this person just actually posted their beautiful trip to Colorado, and they got oh my gosh, they got 1,000 likes. That's insane. I want to do that too. And then they post it, and something was wrong with something, and then next thing they know, they're in an internet war with people demeaning them. It's just like, it's just so disgusting.
The dog collar that they chose in the background of their photo is like a crazy, a restrictive neck collar. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
It's so crazy.
I think it's like an elevated version of people in their cars that contributes to road rage. I think it's the same thing. It's the immediate consequences of, you know, an outburst are not immediately obvious when you're inside a car. If you honk and yell and even like swerve a little bit and act aggressive, drive fast, you're insulated by a cage of metal and protective materials, and like you'll probably be okay. The problem is that if you're on the internet chronically like we are, road rage doesn't end up safe a lot of the times. I think the internet is like the most pure form of that, where it's extremely unlikely that if you go tee off, like full endorphin rush, blast somebody, or like say whatever you want about someone you've never met, there's no recourse. There's no recourse. If you said any of those things to somebody in the locker room in high school, it's a fist fight. You're gonna get headbutted. And like, I'm not saying that is the best way to like resolve an argument. I am saying you learn very quickly the routes of recourse that someone can do to you, and you get way better at negotiating and navigating a conversation. You get way better at delivering the points you need to make, because that person's right there. And I like, that's something that is immediately obvious if you talk to anybody in real life. That would be obvious that, like, take the biggest dungeon dweller, basement dwelling person, and, you know, get two of them and have them have a conversation. They will eventually sink into like a very natural conversation. I'm super confident of that. I think what you're getting at is it's kind of like this zero-sum game that we've created, where it's like there's no actual social element. Or I'm not going to say no, that's absolutist, but the social element of social media is like very downplayed. What's really there is like a free-for-all, again, that endorphin rush, that ability, this arena to like, I'm gonna say the craziest thing I've ever said to somebody, because like they made me a little bit mad. It's like someone barely cut me off on the road. I'm gonna like scream in a rage inside my car to like my heart's content, because I can. There's no recourse. And I just think it's warping our expectation of interaction to the point where I do think we are seeing this bleed out into the real world occasionally, where people kind of take that notion of an online interaction to the real world and they get actually blasted for real. And I think that is a potential problem area.
Yeah.
Where in the spaces where kids are going to have to interact with each other, it's going to be awkward.
Yeah. And I will say, it almost feels like road rage is almost now a little bit therapeutic. Okay, look, I won't condone like the absolute crazies.
You heard it here first, folks.
If you like follow people, or like you have any extra intent outside of like your outburst, look, I will admit I do have.
It's bad.
I mean, like, yeah, it's my weakness. I cannot stand bad drivers. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm in the car by myself, if my wife's in the car with me.
What's your flavor of road rage? What do you like to do?
Depends on what happens to me, honestly. But you know what? I think, and the weird thing, because like you said, is there's never like consequence, because you can kind of like scream and yell. But I think the biggest thing too, and like a example of like a harmless road rage incident, is like if something happens, like you get cut off or you have to like swerve or something, not like dangerous, like it's like a very minimal, like, you know, it just pisses you off. If you honk and like flip them off, like I do a lot, you will almost you get some type of reaction.
Oh yeah.
In some way, it's like a validating reaction.
Yeah.
A lot of the times it's like I'm sorry, and that feels better because you're like, good, they know that they fucked up.
Interesting.
I don't. It like feels better, and to me sometimes. Other times it's like I flip them off, they flip me off. Then I start shouting. And they can I make sure they can visibly see me shouting as I continue to flip them off and lay on my horn or whatever. But it's like, I guess in that instance, maybe it's less therapeutic. But like, I think in some instances, it's like you get like a reaction, and like, you know, like that person, you know, if it was an honest mistake, they're just like, hey, I'm really sorry. Like, I'm sorry about that. Like, I maybe made a mistake or what. Like, I know, like, when like I accidentally, if I'm not like on top of my blind spots or something, and I know I made a driving error and like someone had to adjust to me and they honk, like I'm first to like put my hand up. Like if I know,
Fair play to you. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just like, hey, that's my bad. That was me. Like, me here pointing, hand up. And like, I think that's like in some way, in some fashion, it's like good to see. It's like, okay, they know that they messed up. And maybe that's just like my mentality of like people taking responsibility for their actions. Maybe they don't know about it until they get a negative reaction from something or someone. And like, I feel like the road rage is like a very like, it's not like one size fits all, right? Like it's just very small interactions, but like there's some gratification to that, because sometimes you can get that other person to be like, yeah, I messed up a little bit. You will never, ever get that on like a social media level, ever.
There's no
like,
reason
ever.
You're so right. Because at least there's context and onlookers and obvious, like, not always obvious, but like you can kind of tell when you've messed up in the car. Doesn't matter. There's no impetus to admit your faults or mistakes online. That's so true. Gosh. I can't. Like, has there ever been someone that's like, So, well, unless it's a public figure and they get caught doing something that's so obviously scandalous that they have to do like the classic YouTuber apology or whatever.
Okay.
But on the mundane, but that's a kind of more of a celebrity problem. You're right. On the mundane level, the everyday person, there's no reason to change your ways or like internalize it, like anything, and be like, oh, maybe I should improve myself. The only time I could ever see that happening is like off screen, like maybe within your own head. Like, I don't think that validation you were talking about would ever come through. Like, there would never be the process of like an apology and like that kind of discourse. Probably ever. The only way it could happen is like, man, I shouldn't have told that person to KMS. I feel like truly bad about that. Like, and like that's very unlikely too. So I don't know, man.
It's a gray area, and that's the hardest part. Is that there's no fix. There's no like, if you do X, we will get Y. Well, I mean, there's probably.
I have a theory, but I want to hear yours first.
Well, I just think it's too difficult to say one way or the other. Like, so if you take like what we've been talking about, right? So like social media and the use of it and the addiction of it, it's like it's a chase. It's a gratification process for people. They want to be accepted. They want to be liked. They want maybe to be like, they see influence everyday Joe Schmoes that suddenly are millionaires that it's like, oh, I can do that too. Like, I'm going to chase that. Okay, that's fine. You know what? I think it's silly. But if that's like, if you like get personal gratification and validation from that kind of thing, I think that becomes a problem. Because that affects if that starts affecting your mood outside of like your platform, I think it's a problem. So that's like one element. I think the other element is one that we've kind of talked about in great detail, is like a combination of like the algorithm that pushes you because you're malleable and you don't know who you are and you're gravitated to like, you know, whatever, and other people really like it, and so you're gonna get into it, do it, whatever. I think that's like the other side of the problem too. I think there's like multiple levels and there's multiple different things, and it's like maybe there's a fix, but I personally do not think there's like one thing that you can say or do that will change how the approach is. Because I think like when I think of like society in a whole, and I just like use like medicine as example because I work in it. So like the traditional medicine, it's like a one size fits all, because like that's what you have to deal with. Like, you have so many people, it's like impossible to get like the certain covered, like exact certain just for you care. Like you like to think that, but I feel like a lot of people would argue that they don't get that. Which, why do you think like alternative, holistic, all these other things of medicine are coming to the forefront? Because people are kind of like waking up to like, it's like working in one of those offices as well is like, it's geared towards you, for you, and only for you. And then you get results and you feel better from it. So it's like, that's the medicine example. So then we take that into the social media example, and the whole one size fits all scenario of, we're pushing people into what we want them to be in because we want them to accept our ideology or our values or our content, because that's money, that's power, that's all the things, capitalism, yay, curse, whatever. But it's like, in my opinion, in order to truly like fix it, if you will, or make it better, or reduce some of these crazy things that you see on social media that people get sucked up into, that you're like, what? But it's like it comes down to like individual people, and that's why I say it's like going to be really hard, or there's not necessarily something that you can just like plug in or make better, because like people will always be people, and like it's like we kind of talked about it, I think, a little bit, right? Like the damage is already done in some instances. Like it's happened, and like now the people have it, and like that's kind of, you know, not who they are, but it's like it's what they've decided that they're gonna kind of like the hill they're gonna die on. And in today's culture, it's impossible to have a conversation with someone if they truly are, I hate to say believing, because I feel like people just don't really know, but like the latest thing that they're on, it's so hard to convince them otherwise. And you can't even talk about it. You can't, like, there's value in having a conversation with someone. It's not like I want to change. Like when I talk with people and we have differing opinions, I will express my opinion and I will state why I think it's, you know, why I believe it to be right. But at the end of the day, after that, if you don't want to take it, then that's fine, because you know what? In my opinion, for me, I learned something, because your opinion, while I might not agree with it, it's not going to change my mind, but I'm not going to get mad about it, and I'm going to learn a little bit of something from you. That, you know, that's always my thing. And it's just not possible today. Like, and social media, I think, is like the prime problem with that, because it just pushes this stuff towards people that cannot think for themselves. And that's why like algorithms work. That's why, you know, you can program things to target certain things. Like, I get it. Like, you like what you like, and you will get you know, like I said, in a harmless way, I got really into like venomous snakes.
Snake
my
gang.
My other one was cow hoof trimming videos.
Yo!
Okay? It was a year ago.
Dude!
It was a year ago. I haven't really like watched a lot.
So filled with pus.
I know, it's crazy. It's so okay. Let's just take a second.
It's just like,
Cow hoofing trim videos are so awesome, and I'm sad I don't really get them anymore in my feed. I don't really use
pimple
like my Facebook feed
poppers,
anymore.
Any of that stuff.
Get out of here. If you want the real fix, watch a cow who's like shaking with pain because they have this mass or this abscess inside their hoof, and there's just so much pressure and they can't get rid of it. And then this guy's like, all right, what we're gonna do here is we're gonna trim on down on this side, get on. No, you can see it. Oh, she's reacting to my touch there, and then boom, we pop it, and then like actually a liter of pus and blood just shoots out, and the cow just goes, oh yeah. Like you can see the cow get so much relief. It's kind of like watching a chiropractic video and seeing like an old grandma start crying because she's like, I can feel my legs again. It's times like 100.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
The white line cracks. Yeah, they're real things on cow health. So like I get that part of the algorithm, right? Like that's okay. You know,
that's great.
That's okay. That's like a
working
cool
as
part.
intended. Yeah.
Yeah. But like the flip side of it is like, you know, pushing the other side that just like makes people unconversational, I guess, is like the gentlest way to put it. And like maybe you can argue like that doesn't happen, like you have full control of your content. I think you do, and I also think you don't. I think it's like subtle in its approach, and if you're not able to like look into the content that you're viewing and like either do your own research or pull out of it and say like, hey, wait a minute, no, that's not right, or that's not, you know, something I agree with, or that's not, you know, that's just not really hitting it for me, whatever you want to say. Like, it's not like it just suddenly sends you like this crazy shit and you're just like, oh yes, must follow, all hail algorithm overlords. Like, no, that's not it. But it's literally, I think it finds its way subtly, and then people just in today's age, which is the problem with it, is they take it at face value. They don't do their own looking into it. They don't do their own stuff. They just take it at face value, and they say it's coming from a check mark. It's coming from a
whatever authority. Yeah, sure.
Exactly. So it has to be true. So now I'm going to get really mad about it, or now I'm going to defend it till I die.
Go blue in the face.
Right. Exactly. So And that's why I think, again, ranting, raving, the long answer, there's no one answer for fixing this, in my opinion, because it's like a people problem.
All right. Here's what I think. You're absolutely correct. I totally agree. Distance invites division. The further apart we get, I'm not just speaking like, the further apart we get in like our ideas and our thoughts and our perspectives on things, but I mean like physically, the further we get, the more division is invited into our interactions. I think it's impossible to hate people that you have to be around all the time. I really do. I really believe that. I think if we ever have a school system where it's like completely remote, like we're really going to lose the fabric, like actually lose the fabric of like what it means to be human, because we are like animals at the end of the day, and we need that. I'm not just talking about like, there's like pheromonal exchange. Like, I'm just talking conceptually. Like, it's very, very hard to have an honest conversation and to understand what someone is actually telling you without the context of like nonverbal communication through like the body and seeing emotions wash over people's face in person. Like that is a super intimate aspect of our lives, and like you just can't emulate that online, which is why social media has never been about the conversation. Like they all say that, like, join the conversation. What do you think? Leave a comment. That's never what it's about. It's just like a shooting range of like, woohoo! Whatever thing I want to get off on, like, here we go. Whether it's for my personal humor, entertainment, whether it's the vent, whatever. So as we move into social media, which is inevitable, by the way, like, we're never going to steer away from it completely. We're never going to abandon this path. We're seeing this division, and like, I agree, it seems like it's impossible to fix. Here's where I think this idea of like the human spirit reacting to things and coming up with a counterculture, the same thing happened with our physical bodies, dude. We were hunter-gatherers. We had a physical life, even up through the industrial age. Slowly, we got more sedentary. As we made our lives better, as technology made our lives better, we got more sedentary. What did we do? We didn't just become like we did a little bit. We did get a lot lazier, and we did get like our physical health profile did go down in a lot of ways. But we invented exercise. We created gyms and exercise protocols, and we learned more about like, my back hurts, my knees hurt, I feel terrible. Like, bad things were happening to us in mass as we became a more sedentary society, and we figured out a way to supplement that. We made a supplement. It was exercise, it was gyms, it was diet protocols, all this stuff. Like, it took a long time, and it's not perfect, and there's people that suffer from being sedentary, certainly, but we found a way to do it. I think we will just have to find our supplement for the age that we're already in. I almost said the coming age, but the age that we're already in, which is we are suffering from a lack of closeness, a lack of proximity. Seriously, we're gonna have to figure out a way to build up these communities that meet whatever it is. Like, we always say that, like, oh my God, influencers are ruining the world, and they are. But there are good ones, and it's silly to say like, never listen to influencers, like never, they're so dumb, blah 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 blah. Guess what? We're already listening to them. They're the most affluent, influential people on the face of the planet right now. You could have a substandard IQ, but as long as you're entertaining and you bring something to the table on Twitch, you are a foremost person of the planet Earth. You are the most eminent personality, top 1% person. It just happens. So instead of trying to be like, stop, like, stop that, like, don't listen to them, like, let throw it all aside. I think the way to go about this is we have to have an outrageously positive and overwhelmingly hopeful segment of, call them influencers. I think it'll be more of a passive influence, more like a lead by example type thing. But they just have to emerge, and I think they will. And
after they emerge, they have to incorporate these communities and be like, push people towards things that bring people together. As trite as that sounds, and I know it sounds like I'm talking like a Beatles song right now, like come together, but really, I think we're going to have to supplement human interaction, and I think it's going to be based around people leading these communities, whatever they are, whatever, like it's hobby based, sports based. There's going to have to be this movement from the ground up of people like the government, huge celebrities, companies being like, oh, get outside and play with your friends. That'll never work. It's going to have to be these people that are absorbing most of our watch time on social media. It's going to have to come from them. And I think if they can feel that moral principle and like get convicted by it, I think we can make it. I think we can make it, and I think we can supplement what we need. It's just not going to happen right away, and we're going to have to suffer through some awkward social media stuff in the meantime.
Yeah, my fear of that not working is, because I agree with you. Like, I think if there was just a way to like kumbaya everything together, then it would absolutely work. And I think that, you know, that's the case. And the reason that's the case is because it's not easy. It's hard. It's a struggle. And because of that struggle is, you know, when you come out on the other side, especially as like a group, you know, the whole misery loves company thing, when you do that, it's always better. It's 100% better, always, forever. And that's always been like a thing, you know, the theme of coming from hunter-gatherers to the Ice Age, ancient civilization that was lost after Cataclysm. Then
episode 2.
Right, I'm really excited to talk about that. But like when you look at that stuff, it's like people weren't afraid to do the hard thing because that was really like the only thing available to them. The problem I see today is, especially with how social media is working right now with like Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, it's like snap your finger, entertain me right now, instant gratification. If it's not hitting it for me, I'm nexting you. You're gone. I'm moving on to the next thing. It's this gratification level, and it's not just, I mean, like social media is like a huge piece of like the obviously like the entertainment side of things, like when we consider the aspect of like instant like I want to watch what's entertaining me right here right now. If it's not funny, I'm moving on, kind of a thing. But like that's true in everything today. It's like a societal problem, and it's like it comes with the territory of advancing your technology, making your life easier. There should be things out there that I can just take a pill, or I can just wear something, or I can just do something, and I should get the desired results that I want. When the reality is, what they don't tell you, which is like, I'm with you with influencers, like if they entertain you and you can learn something from them, great. But do not take everything they say at face value and be like, okay, this is the way I do things now. Because like, just as like an experiment, I know like my wife's a big TikToker, huge TikToker. Oh my gosh. She's like, why don't you get a TikTok? I'm like, well, I don't really feel like selling my soul to China. So
we already have, dude. I'm sorry to tell you. We already have.
I know. Tinfoil hat. I'm a JRE simp. Joe Rogan read the TikTok terms of service and conditions, all that stuff.
You should read the Apple ones. Or the
I'm
Samsung
sure it's
ones.
disgusting. I'm sure it's disgusting.
Oh, it is.
I'm sure they're all disgusting. But, you know, TikTok's the hot topic item. So, you know, that's why I give her grief. But, it's like cooking ones, like cooking hacks, etc.
Oh, yeah, they're lovely. I love
like
them.
we've tried some work. We've tried others.
Some are trash.
Some suck like really badly, and it's just like, okay, this was clearly just like, it looked really cool. I don't know how they manipulated it, but you know, they did it. But like, that's the thing, like just influencers, obviously like cooking, you're not going to be like, oh my gosh, I have to do it this way and this way alone. There's no way anyone's going to convince me or stop me or change my mind about this. Like, No, it's fucking cooking. But the problem is, like, influencers their job is to influence you, and it's the other levels of things where people don't pull themselves away from, and they just listen to their favorite person. And like, that's the biggest thing. It's like, oh, they're my favorite person, they've never lied to me before. It's like, bitch, you haven't even fucking looked yourself. But it's like, it's that, like, that's the type of problem. And you know, the reason why I just don't think like it's not gonna get fixed to the level that you said it would is because it's just the instant gratification thing. It's like, people will not put in the work. As technology continues to advance, social media being one of them, our access to information, our access to entertainment, our access to each other via social media, the need to not have to interact. We need it. We absolutely need it. We like crave it at some level. And I think the only way that you can say like, I don't really need it is if you've already had like a really established group that you've already been interacting with as people in and out.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Yeah. Like, I look at our friend group, like the last time we took a trip was what, in March?
Yeah.
One trip. There's there've been multiple others, but it's like, I don't have like like, I'm cool with like talking to you guys on like Discord, or talking to you guys like in text messages or whatever. Like, when I don't get that, like, I'm like,
crazy, stir crazy.
Yeah. But it's like I don't need that human interaction, because like, I know who you guys are. I've known you for so long that like, your text message is your voice in my head with your mannerisms, and it makes me laugh.
Built on previous experience.
Exactly. So it's like, but that takes time and effort to build. And while it's not like effort that's hard, it's fun. Like, in this day and age, the way it's going with the instant gratification, I just feel like people will not trend to doing like a harder thing and being like, you know what, this isn't good for me. I think I'm going to try something a little harder. I think there's going to be people like that. And I hope, the hope is that... You don't think
the masses are capable?
No, I don't.
It.
I really don't. And it's
I want to believe, Austin.
It's like a sad thing.
I want to believe they can.
I do too. I really do. But it's just like, and you know, that's like another inspiration for like the podcast. Do I think I'm going to change someone's life or worldview doing this? No. But what I am doing is I'm getting, you know, my opinion out there, and obviously I hold it in some sort of high regard, but it's just like in this society of like, think this way, think that way. Like, I'm not telling you how to think, but I just want you to take longer, or just think a little bit harder about it, or just take the time and just like look into it yourself. Like, that's why like our topic list, that's why the things that I'm so like, I really want to talk about and stuff like that. It's like, I want people to just look into it themselves, because half the time it's like really cool stuff. Like, are we going to talk about like societal problems and you know, why this fucking shit sucks and all that stuff? No. You know, there's some really cool stuff we're going to talk about that you're just going to be like, what? That's crazy. Like, I talked about ancient, like, lost ice age, post ice age, cataclysmic civilization lost. Like, that has nothing to do with anything that I'm talking about right now. And like, it's just fun. And I just want to get out there. Like, and I just, you know, the other thing was like Joe Rogan, he's one podcast. I mean, there's tons of others. I know there are, but obviously it's a big one. And I'm just like, I just want another available like source for someone, maybe, right? Maybe to listen and just be like, hey, you know what? I want to, you know, maybe I need to think about it this way a little bit, or I need to look into this a little bit more. I don't really like what they're saying, but I'm going to look into it myself because I have noticed something a little bit. And maybe that's going to be it, right? You know, my dad always told me the world's not going to change with like one big actor, like big acts. It's like the small little random acts that are going to do it. So it's like, that's the inspiration of it, right? So yeah, it's my hope that, you know, it's the hope that there's people out there that will take the time, that will step away, obviously not like unplug, right? But like just step away and be like, I'm going to think for myself, and I'm not going to let anyone think for me. And then I'm going to make decisions for myself based on myself versus my external factors. I really hope so. It's tough for me to say like, yeah, it's going to happen because the instant gratification thing is such a huge piece, in my opinion, that it's going to be really, really, really hard. But maybe there's hope. Maybe I'm a little pessimistic about it, which is weird because I feel like I'm normally like an optimistic person. But yeah,
I will never fault you for being realistic. I just think these things happen in phases that are sometimes longer than our ability for forethought. I think there's a possibility we're still in sort of a starstruck phase where like the idea of an individual proprietor rising up to great heights through just like their own personal content and like editorial control in their own agency and not through like the Hollywood or corporate system. Like, I think that's still such an emphatic narrative that we haven't quite thought about objectively yet. And I think that's why influencers kind of have young people in a chokehold sometimes. I think the standards for that can change. I think they can get better. I think as our generation gets older, as the next generation gets older, I think we can start navigating these things better. Like there will be cultural information passed down to help people with media literacy and like the literacy involved with like assessing if things are fake or not. I've had a dream, Austin, for so long of starting a charity that helps kids getting internet access that are starting to get to that age of how to look at a digital image and try your best to see if it's manipulated or not, like, or whether it's an AI generated image or not, or, is this a phishing scam? How can I protect myself when I'm talking in like a chat room? Like, how do I obscure my personal information so I don't accidentally give away really sensitive stuff? And like, what is digital artifacting and how can you tell if this video has been manipulated or edited in some way? I think those standards can get better, and I also think the echelon of influencers right now, I think there can be a changing of the guard. I think there can be. I think it could be. I think it can get a lot less dumb. And while I think the people in the pop culture will always be kind of superfluous personalities that are just like kind of ridiculous or whatever. I do think some solid people could rise up and kind of act, again, passively. I don't really believe in the influencing model as much as like the lead by example model, but I think they can emerge. And I think the standards for both the audience and how they assess things and also on part of the people who are prominent and that have influence, I think the standards can change for both and get better.
It's funny you say that because I'm not going to change my position. I still am a little pessimistic, but I think like the person that you or the group of people that you talk about in that regard. I think there is one like that right now, and someone I already talked about. It's Elon Musk. It's seriously like if you look at him,
I think it's a great template for what I'm saying in regards to you. Absolutely,
like he is like the one guy that. I mean, yeah, he kind of built himself up, and you could argue like he's not really like swayed by like corporate, like other people. Like he's kind of like his self-made. He owns all this shit. It's really, really cool, and then he kind of just does whatever he wants. And I mean, I think it's evident that he's like taking a stronger because like he used to be like meme lord. I mean, he still is, right? He if you follow him on X, he's really funny. To follow. He posts some like really cool shit, like SpaceX stuff. He posts some really funny stuff. He's a gamer. He posted some Diablo 4 content a couple days ago, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, he streamed Diablo 4 on X, I believe, a month or two ago or something like that, to just like showcase it.
See, but was that a marketing ploy of X's new streaming quality, or was he actually a Diablo 4?
Oh no,
we'll never know, bro.
Well, he said both. He was like, I play Diablo 4. And we're bringing streaming to X, so I want to show you both. But that's like the nice thing. He's like literally telling you, right? But anyway, he says all that stuff, but then like I feel like he's getting more serious because like the only thing I'll say about it is like Elon Musk did go to Israel to like just see, he went. Like he's not just like fucking around anymore. Like he's like, I think he kind of understands his position that he's put himself in, and I think he is not changing himself, but he is taking a little bit more of like a serious approach. And like the serious approach part, I
He's
say like,
feeling
yeah,
the gravity of his influence maybe a little bit.
he traveled overseas and saw that. And then why I say he's not changing himself at all is he literally went on, I don't know who was interviewing him. Like he was on like a big, it's like one of those like obnoxious interviews where it's like a humongous stage and there's just like two little chairs,
like
a
the
little
tech
coffee table
type interview.
Yeah.
Terrible.
And then like it's just two people sitting there in this massive stage. But he literally told the CEO of Disney to go fuck himself for pulling
verbatim.
You can look it up. If you look it up, Elon Musk on an interview, he literally says,
I totally
like,
missed
Disney,
I didn't hear anything
go
about
fuck
that.
yourself. And he says it because like Disney, it's like other big platforms pulled their ad revenue from X, and like he says like it's in order to like, well, not like blackmail him, but I think he says blackmail like into basically changing his like the content that he's allowing on X, because he's literally making it free. Like he's literally letting, as long as they don't break like the real important rules of conduct and stuff like that, he's letting them post. And he said as much, like, you know, a lot of people that were banned, he's unbanned, and people are really mad about that. He's done it on both sides, and he said like, I don't really give a shit. Like, I think one way, but because of the way I think, it's not like the only way. And like there needs to be the other side, and that's his stance, with X. And so like when all the big ad people like Disney, Pepsi, etc. pulled their ads from X, I think it was to try and be like, hey, we're pulling unless you change. And he was like, literally, like, if you try to blackmail me with money, like, go fuck yourself. He literally says that. I encourage anyone listening to this that has not seen it, you don't believe me, literally, hey, Jamie, no, I'm just kidding.
You want that shit so bad,
Oh,
don't
I know,
you?
dude. I know. But
I'll shave my head, bro.
you literally, like, you can pull it up. He literally on whatever, I want to say like a world stage, but it's like a big, he literally an interview.
Oh, yeah.
He literally says, go fuck yourself. And that's why he says he's not changing. Like, he's not changing who he is. While he might, like, he's taking, I think, his world platform seat a little bit more seriously than the meme lord. He also still posts memes. He also still jokes around on X. Like, he doesn't change himself, but he's like taking it more seriously. And like, that's the type of, you know, if I was to pin like someone to lead the charge for making people take a step back and say like, hey, maybe I should reconsider some of the things that I'm consuming, or just think about it, or look into it at the very least, like maybe like source it from somewhere else just to see like what the other side is. Yeah, I think he can do it because he's such a proponent of making sure both sides of the story are told no matter what. Like, he doesn't care about the money hits that he's taking. He doesn't care about the negative press. He doesn't care about like the reviews that his businesses are now, becoming under. Like, he does not care. He literally cares about like the human species, the free speech, and like that he thinks it's so important that he's willing to risk it all.
That's the main thing.
Yeah. I mean, he also said verbatim that he would go to prison before he would allow like a censorship angle to ever happen on X again. Like he like, you can look that one up too. I think he said that. Yeah. So
I think I'm wrapping my head around what you're saying, and again, like as a template in reference to you, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm talking more on maybe more of a grassroots level, because he's like one of the biggest personalities in the world, but I think there are people out there that could wield influence like that to people. I really do.
Well, I think he could.
They may be a dime a dozen now, but I think in terms of like, I think the core of that is like humanism, like a humanist perspective, like wanting to improve the condition of the human race. There are people out there like that. Maybe they're sitting on their hands right now. Maybe they probably don't have like a huge interest in commanding the hearts and minds of people, which probably is what makes them better people. So I think it just takes a little bit of inertia and a little bit of context of seeing how the way the world's going, for them to step out there and like, you know, take their place in the limelight, or a portion of the limelight. That's it. And I'll say I think it's a phase, and I think these phases go on for very, very long stretches, and maybe that's why we haven't seen the improvement we want, because like it hasn't been happening for that long. It really, all of this hasn't been happening for that long.
You're right. It hasn't.
A decent amount of time. Like I think there's time to like reflect and turn the dial on a couple things that will improve it for everybody. Like actually improve it for everybody, and not just increase our watch time and send us into a scrolling hole.
Yeah, I just think it's like
you emerge.
I think it's just like how accelerated it happened. It's just, I think that's more of like the scary.
There's more photos taken
part,
in like
right?
a week than there were in like the first 40 years of photography combined.
It's just
stuff like that where it's like, okay.
Yeah, you know, like I am happy for people to do whatever they want, and like if you want to post about your life and you know, you want to like do that, whatever, like that's fine. Like, does it make sense to me? No, not in some aspects of it, right? Like I like the pictures for like the memories versus like, hey, look what I did, which I think is another thing that social media another beast that social media created, was the hey, look at me concept, because I need.
It's a hell of a drug, man.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's literally the same thing as like wanting people to like you, like in person, like it. You know, I do not blame people for wanting to do that. I just, again, it's one of those things where it's just like it's like a gray area. It's like, I want you to do what makes you happy, but also if this is literally driving you on a day-to-day basis and it affects you outside of your app, it's a problem. And it's just like, you manufacture pictures to look good, and then I've like, I'm sure you've seen it, I've seen it, the gram photos, like, it's like the manipulation of the poses and all this stuff, and it's like, like,
the
are
dial's
you
turning a little bit on that though? A little bit.
I hope so, but it's just like, yeah, are you even having fun? Are you enjoying your time like on the beach?
Oh, hell no.
Yeah, I've watched you for a half an hour try 17 different things, and apparently none of them have worked.
Oh, you're talking about seeing them in the wild right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
dude, I live in Miami, bro.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you see it all the time. It's just like, it's like, what's happening here? Like what? Like, I understand being like, hey, like I want to do this because I think it's going to look cool for this picture, and then I want to share that with my family, my friends, like you guys, whoever, whatever. Like, I get that. I think that's fine, but it's like to the level of like where it's fake because someone else did it and it hit really hard, and then you're just doing it to replicate that, which, what is it? Mimicry is the greatest form of flattery. But like, just think for yourself. Like, if you're not having fun doing this, then just don't do it. Like, take a picture of something you enjoy. Like, I feel like you can like spot out like the actual like happiness and the actual like joy of an experience, or like or something you're doing when it's real versus like, hey, I'm posing it this way because
it's tough,
that's what's in right now. Like, I don't know, like maybe I'm just a jaded old man. I'm just a jaded, I guess, but like, yeah, probably. Which is what I'm trying to be like. I like, do what you want to do and what makes you happy, but it's just like, I feel like those people, it's like, if I don't get it perfect, I'm not going to get the likes. If I don't get the likes, that's going to affect me. And it's like,
right, but nobody's born doing that. You know what I mean? It's that slippery
exactly.
slope. It's the same thing as the UX example. It's like, I love sharing things with my friends and family. This person happens to have some sort of physical edge, like, you know, a really symmetrical face, whatever. Suddenly, the picture that they share of their family thing or like of themselves gets like way, way, way more attention and validation than they ever would have expected. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, that was a sweet dopaminergic event. Let me hit that again.
Right.
Which is why I don't necessarily fault people for falling into that. But again, I think the standards are getting a little bit better. We're starting to develop more language and more ways to like kind of assess these sort of things, to where now I think there's less of an excuse, you know, to completely surrender to that and like lose yourself. Slowly. We're crawling out of that era slowly, I think.
Yeah, and like, again, I'm probably an old man about it, and I'm a little jaded about it, but it's like, I also understand, like, you do it once, you go viral, and you can monetize it. Like, that's why I love capitalism, because if you can monetize something like that, then, and you enjoy doing it, then why wouldn't you do that? And then, so, like, I get, like, actual influencers and you know, you're making good, like, you're monetizing these photos, like, yeah, post the shit out of it because that's what makes you money. But it's just like, I don't know, I guess I just don't understand the narrative of people that are doing that because they want to try to get to that level, but they're not really trying to get to that level. They just think something's gonna hit. Like, I don't know, I guess I'm like ebbing and flowing on it, right? Because like, you never know what could hit, but the percentage of you going viral on this incredibly manufactured photo that you're doing is what? Is it high? Is it low? I don't know. I would guess it's low, but you don't know unless you try. It's just, I don't know. Like, I just feel like, you know, if that's what really makes you happy and you really enjoy looking miserable to look happy, then do it. I guess. I don't know.
To your other point, if you know yourself and you can actually define that easily, I think that situation would resolve itself. But if you don't, and ever since you were a youngin', your enjoyment and like your dopamine response was built on that, it would be hard. It would be hard to kind of shuffle that. They say the age a child becomes a celebrity is the age that they stop maturing. That's reductive. That's not the full picture, but it's kind of true. It's kind of true. Like, you kind of stunt yourself for a good portion until you hit like a critical moment later in life, probably later than most people, where you're like, oh my God, I gotta like mature. Like, I feel like we see that with like, I don't know, like Disney kids. That is something to really think about. If you have kids and you're involving them in your social media, like, I think that's awesome. Like, who wouldn't want to share the beauty of like raising a child? Like,
oh yeah,
again, slippery slope. Suddenly your family is like getting a lot of likes, like, your guys are really cute, or you make like crafts and everybody loves your crafts, and like, now your children are actors. Like, now your children have to be part of this. Like, they can't necessarily opt into that, number one. Number two, it's like, what's that going to do to them, man? Are they going to like expect like that from life going forward? Like, that's why it's, again, I keep harping on this, but we got to increase the standards and like try to like not insulate, that's not the right word, but identify the things as they come and help kids navigate that, or young people navigate it. And I think that's where I fall ultimately on this conversation is, I don't think we can ever steer away from it. I don't think we can tuck it under the bed and be like, hopefully it'll just get better. I think we have to like actively get our hands dirty and fight the good fight, dude. Like, what else can you do?
Yeah.
For every Jake Paul out there, you have to have like someone who's saying some completely normal thing.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, again, I where I stand really is just, social media is really, really good. I think the algorithms are nice in some regard, but the big problem comes in when it becomes so targeted to push certain things that affects people and their day-to-day and companies and all this crap. So it's just like, it's so hard for me. But like I will say, like, I mean, I said it earlier, I'll say it again. Without social media and like the algorithms that I was a part of, like, I wouldn't have found the interesting topics that I did regarding, you know, I alluded to it. We'll talk about it. I'm really excited. The whole lost civilization thing. And that is the rabbit hole that started for me. It was Facebook Reels. And then I watched enough of them to be like, you know what? I don't know how I got them, honestly. I don't know. They just knew. But like I got them. I kept getting them. I looked up who they were because I knew it was Joe Rogan. I didn't know who the guests were, and I found out who they were, and then I watched all their podcasts, and then they started talking about things outside of the Lost Civilization stuff, which sent me on another rabbit hole down other things, and then it's like it just bing, bada boom, bada bing, bada bang, bada boom, and like here I am now. So it's like social media and like obviously and like the personal, like not personal outreach, but like the outreach of this podcast is dependent on social media, and so it's like I'm not condemning it to die by any means. Like it's a useful tool, and like it absolutely makes life easier. It makes connecting easier. You know, like someone in Germany could listen to this podcast and be like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. Like I think that's cool that it reaches them, and like how does it do that? Probably by social media, you know, like it just randomly happens. So there's beauty
Not
to
totally
it.
randomly.
Well, okay, yeah. I mean, there's
Straight
beauty
male
to it.
in his late 20s, interest in sports, you're going to get marketed Joe Rogan. So
Okay.
there's input. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I'm saying like for us and for like a random person, I guess. But I understand it's not like completely random. But like
on our level, it would be, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like something I like to think about as far as like the social media beauty. It's like it is good. It does have good, but yeah, I think people are the problem with it, and because people are the problem, people continually will make it problem for other people that can't think for themselves in some capacity, and it's just like this downward slope. And is there a fix? I mean, obviously we've talked about it. We've said, I would say we've both outright said
Tough.
Sort of.
Tough going. Mine's a little
Hard.
bit more rose-colored than yours. But
Hard. Yeah, it's hard. But, you know, I think if more people like maybe Elon Musk
Realm
come
of
around.
possibility is, I think, where we would land. So
Right.
We had to amalgamate our answers.
Yeah. And I just hope, you know, as the younger generation continues to come up with the information age, and everything is obviously just, it continues to get easier and easier and easier to access. And I think that and what I will say too is with the access, I think parenting that is going to be and is so parenting in general is just the hardest job that you could ever do ever in your life at any capacity, and I am dead set on that, because you are literally trying to shape the mind of a incredibly malleable human being that at each level of their adolescence, their brain continually changes and develops. Like I can't imagine it, and I can't imagine having to try to do that in the age we are in today, like the information age, because it's just so easy for them to like look at stuff. The flip side of that is maybe instead of like censoring or taking that stuff away, outside of like the obvious like
beheading
like,
video,
like whatever, like violent, gory, like, you know, sexual stuff that's out there, you know, in some capacity, seeing that, not to that level, but some of that stuff, I think now in today's age, it should be less like, oh, don't look at that, don't censor like that.
Oh, sure.
But like, okay, you saw it, let's talk about it. Like, I want to hear what you think about it, and I want you to hear what I think about it, and then I want to continue to have a discussion about it until we both feel like we're at a level of understanding, like,
right.
And the trick being with like kids is like, well, their level of understanding, depending on their age, because of their psychological development, is very different. Like if you talking to a toddler with the only ability to concrete think and unable to abstract think, yeah, you might want to have that conversation again, because they will literally take everything you say at face value. It's like when you say literally, that's
literally,
them.
Yeah.
That is them.
Actually, literally.
Yes. But the abstract value thinking, like, do you have to talk about it later when that happens? Because then they can think on another level to which you can explain it. And you know what? That's hard. But I think that's like, you know, if we were to say like, hey, how do we kind of like prepare or kind of like buffer or help the next the next up and comers or whatever. It's less like censoring, because obviously
Insulation is psychologically goes against everything we know about like shaping someone and like helping them understand something. You can't say don't think about that.
Right,
Don't think about white elephants. Yeah.
Because then you just start thinking about it, or you want to do. I mean, it's just natural. It's just human instinct, especially when you're young. But I just think like, and then the other thing is like trying to understand to a certain level the comprehension that the younger person has on the issue, and not just trying to like ramrod your specific thoughts and everything in that regard with it, because obviously that is that I don't think that's going to be helpful either, because then they'll just be like, well, that didn't really make sense to me, but I'm having to accept it. And that's when I think like you kind of like create possible rifts or whatever. But it's just like, it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. That's why I said it's like going to be the hardest thing that you'll ever have to do ever in your life. But like, I think it's necessary to really like take the time and understand where they're coming from. And then I think, obviously, we circle back as a theme, you have to understand you as a person too, so you don't get like mad and just like this person up, this little person up, whether they're 17 or 7, because they disagree with something you're saying, and you're just like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, yeah, they don't. That's why you're there. You got to help them out a little bit, like give them something. And like, it's going to be frustrating, and it's probably going to be hard, but I guarantee, well, gosh, I can't say that. I can't guarantee anything, but I
subscribe for more parenting tips.
I truly believe that would be helpful in down the road, like when they're older, because that stuff sticks. And I think I speak a little bit from personal experience with that. I believe you do too, in a capacity. It's like, sometimes we've had to navigate it ourselves, and we've been very fortunate to be able to do so without any like negative connotations, right? Not to say that we were ever predisposed or had anything to that nature, but I think it was easier for us to do it as we grew up, because as we grew up, information became more available, and we were able by that time to really think about it in our own terms. There was
less pitfalls. There was no social pressure.
Correct. Yeah.
You couldn't. I mean, there was no one was gonna bear down on you for saying something crazy. I mean, it was way, way, way less likely, and the networks were so much smaller. So the wildfire effect just wasn't really possible.
Right. Yeah.
The other thing. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say you could have a conversation with someone, and like to what you were saying, like there was less social pressure, there was less all of these external stressors and everything like that.
I think where I would end, where I ultimately fall on an issue like this is, if you don't want to engage with this growing topic, like if you want to insulate your kids from this, you can't. You actually can't. I mean, unless you go strictly medieval, it's impossible. This is something that we are all going to have to deal with, like for better or for worse. There are just lines of access to your kid's mind that you have actually zero control over. And that's always been the way. I mean, like when your kids go to school, that's an element of that. It's just that now there are thousands and thousands and thousands of these messages coming in every day. If they have a device, if their friend has a device, any kind of screen. So again, like you said, it's not about insulating them from that. It's about figuring out a way to deal with it and not shying away from the problem and not trying to create a system of like close your eyes, hope for the best. It has to be like an active part of our daily consideration. And again, my take is that we will supplement it. We will find a way to deal with it and be better about it. And I hope we do, for our sake. Because I'd like to continue using the awesome parts about it, and I'd like to continue engaging in, the D&D community I'm a part of. or talking about MMA, like, gosh, like it's expanded my ability to talk about those things like tenfold, and I never would be able to do it at the capacity and rate that I do it at without it. So I don't want to get rid of it. I just want to improve it. And that's where I stand.
I agree. And, you know, maybe the change that will help fix everything will come from like a parenting standpoint. Maybe that's the answer in some capacity. I just, you know, I guess still just the pessimistic side of it is just like, when we talk about like how we utilize it and how it's helpful for us and how we are able to filter it, it's like I used to think that too. I used to think everybody could do that, and the reality is it's just they just can't. I just maybe I've lost a little faith in humanity or of some capacity, but it's just that's where I keep getting hung up on. It's like, do I want to believe that it's a possibility that like we'll be able to work through it? It'll be hard, it'll be difficult, but we'll be able to do it. Yes, I do. But just the way everything tracks and everything trends and everything's just so fast and so instant, and we can do that. It's like nobody takes the time to like, if there's an easy way and there's a hard way, no one looks past the hard stuff to like how much better it would be if you just did it that way, even though it's more difficult and it'll take longer, versus like your Band-Aid, instant gratification. I feel good about this. I don't have to think about it again until it comes up, which I'm happy with. Then, you know, that's, I guess, where I'm getting hung up the most is just, I just don't know, as things continue to get easier as far as access and learning. I say learning, but it's really just access to information that is in some capacity altered to fit a more, you know, a certain narrative or a certain advertisement or something certain to help that company or that group monetize it. I don't know. I think it's just a hard problem, but I think at least the very, very first step in anything is just being able to evaluate it for yourself. Just think for yourself for a little bit and just look at it and just like understand what you're doing. And then once you get a grasp on that, you can kind of just like move forward in whatever direction you want. I just think that's the best starting place as far as like, you know, not growing up. You're in it right now, and you have the ability to like just listen and to something or look something up on your own accord or whatever it is. You're in the driver's seat of it. And, you know, obviously that's going to be able to drive the biggest changing element, you know, for all of this stuff. But, you know, yeah, I think that's where I stand on it as far as, you know, where we go from here, I guess. But, you know, again, it's beautiful. Social media is great. It connects us on so many levels. It gives us access to so much information that can be unfiltered, that can be helpful or hurtful. But yeah, I think there's just like a big component of manipulation that can occur. I mean, you said it yourself, having worked in the industry, there is manipulation that occurs. It's not all cynical. It's just monetary driven. But at what point is it, you know, does your monetary driven cause become more, I hate to say cynical, but, you know, when it's not like harmless, I guess, in that capacity. So, you know, we could probably talk about it forever if we wanted to, but, you know, I guess it is what it is. And hopefully, like I said, I'll say with everything else, is like the biggest thing that I want is just for people just to take a step back and think about it themselves, look at something themselves, just evaluate it, and just do a little bit more. Take longer than the minute-long reel or the 30-second reel, or, you know, if you find yourself in a 2-minute and 30-second reel or whatever, just take the time to really like dig into it. And I'm not talking about the cooking ones or like the fun ones. I'm talking about, everybody knows what I'm talking about. So just think for yourself, you know, just do it yourself. And you know, hopefully, you know, I certainly want to be a catalyst for that. You know, like I said, I've said it a bunch. That's why I'm here doing this thing. And you know, that's, I guess, as Forrest Gump would say, that's all I have to say about that.
What's up, guys? At this point in the podcast, my mic explodes, and I contribute nothing for the rest of this episode. Austin, as you'll see in the next couple minutes, slowly realizes this and soldiers on like a champ, and that's why we love him. As for me, I say nothing more after this point, so if you're a conhead, you can go ahead and log off now. Otherwise, we're going to listen to Austin sum it up. But, wow, if I had to add any more comments, I guess, follow us. Keep listening. If you thought this topic was too poignant, too serious, we're going to talk about some real goofy stuff, some weird stuff, some science maybe, some old history. I don't know. Aliens? Who cares? We're going to talk about all of it. Thanks for tuning in. And let's see Austin flounder now by himself for the last couple minutes of this podcast. Okay, see ya.
So the other thing I would say too, right, is, I'm not going to ramble again. Don't worry. Is I said it a lot before. I think these types of things have a lot more fluidity as far as like interaction. So hey, I want to hear what we want to hear what you want to what you think about this stuff if you have it. Obviously Connor said that his fiance would love to have her on and hear about like the child aspect of it. Maybe that's something we could do later on down the road. But if you have an opinion, I'm just curious to hear what you think. Like I said, I take everything, any interaction that I have with people, I learn from it. Whether it's something I can add to my own opinion, or if we disagree, there's always something to learn, which is why I think conversation is so important. So we'll have stuff for our own social media, despite the condemnation of it. Yeah, we'll still use it. Like I said, we both really enjoy it. So yeah, just hit us up. Let us know if there's something that you want to say about it. We would love to hear about it. And like I said, I'm sure this is something we'll talk about again down the road. And, we can certainly add that. And like I said, like Connor said, his fiance is literally in this field for children, which we talked about in some capacity. So it'd be great to hear that. But yeah, we've got topics. If you got one you want to talk about, you want us to talk about, send it to us and we'll add it to the list and we'll go from there. But thanks for listening, and certainly look forward to doing this more and hope to have you guys listen to episodes in the future.